If you want to learn more about labor contractions, what they actually are, what they really feel like, and if those ones you're experiencing are Braxton Hicks or the real thing, keep on watching. Hi, I'm Jalette, a mama of 3 under 5, and I'm currently training to become a birth and postpartum doula. This channel is all about pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. So if that sounds like it's right up your alley, hit that subscribe button and turn your notifications on so you don't miss a thing. So let's talk about labor contractions. I feel like for first-time moms especially, this is a bit of a mystery subject because you really don't know how they're gonna feel, what's actually going on. But knowledge is your best tool here to cope and manage through your labor. So let's talk about what's actually happening. So contractions are muscle tensing and relaxing in your uterus. So this is the space that's actually holding your baby. So whether you can feel them or not, you're actually having contractions throughout your whole pregnancy. So these muscles are tightening and relaxing. If you do feel them, this is what we call Braxton Hicks. They're kind of practice contractions, and it's really your uterus getting toned and getting ready for that big show, your labor. And I'll link my other video right here. I have a video on breathing techniques you can use throughout your labor, and through your Braxton Hicks contractions are the best time to practice your breaths because that's the most like the real thing that you're gonna experience. I know some compare labor contractions to like period cramping, which while I think if you have no idea what labor contractions feel like, that's probably the most similar thing you've experienced, but it really doesn't even touch on the intensity and where those contractions are actually happening. Okay, so what's actually happening during a contraction? So during your labor contractions, your uterus is tightening and lifting up. So what's happening is when your body is ready to birth your baby, your labor will begin, and these contractions will come at mostly consistent intervals. They will last between 45 to 90 seconds, and they can vary throughout your labor. And they should gradually get closer as you progress through your labor, but that's not always the case. I recommend that you pay more attention to the intensity of your labor contractions than the actual timing interval. So what's happening in your uterus is your muscles are lifting up and becoming more dense at the top of your belly. And this is so your baby's head can progress down. So the muscles there are going to be thinner, and it's also dilating your cervix, which is the area that the baby's going to come through. And I touch on this in my breathing video, but this is why it's very important for one of those breaths that you do through your labor and visualizations is to imagine things coming up. That's going to help those muscles actually do that. So as far as how contractions feel, of course there's that pain factor, but we're gonna just put that aside for a second and talk about how it's actually feeling within your body and the intensity. Because I think that's the most important, to really understand what's happening, and then the more you understand what's happening, the less fear that can creep in and the more comfortable you can be during the process. So the contraction will come on sort of like a wave. So you'll definitely feel it starting up, and then it gradually becomes more intense till it comes to a peak, and then we'll start going back down. And there's a little bit of comfort in this because you know when a contraction starts, you can feel the peak and you know that you have relief soon in sight, at least for a little bit. And how it truly feels in your body is going to vary person to person. I think it feels like your lower midsection tensing up and radiating through the tops of your legs. Now, if baby isn't in the optimal position, sometimes you'll feel this more in your back, and that's what you call back labor. That's why it's super important that your baby's in a good position, and you'll want to do all that you can to make sure that happens. So true labor contractions, you're going to feel that tightening. Like I said, there will be a peak and then gradually come down after that. For Braxton Hicks contractions, this is going to vary greatly. Sometimes it's going to be a tightening that's going to be tight for quite a bit before it releases, and I find the best way to get through that, if you're finding more intense Braxton Hicks or they're a little bit more painful for you, is to get up, move around, drink some water, or if you have been moving around, lay down on your side for a little bit, and they should subside. But if you think you're having Braxton Hicks contractions and you do all of those things and they don't subside, it's very possible that you may be starting your real labor. So you're going to want to pay attention to the consistency and the intervals that you're getting this tightening. Now, know, even sometimes with Braxton Hicks contractions, I feel a little bit lightheaded right before they happen. And for me, that was also a sign of Braxton Hicks versus the real thing. So just pay attention to, if you do feel any of that tightening throughout your pregnancy, pay attention to how you feel in those instances so you can use that later on to know whether it's Braxton Hicks or the real thing. I will say, once your labor truly starts, you will know, because the intensity is much more than with the Braxton Hicks contractions. So with true labor contractions, like I said, you'll feel them coming on, the peak, and the gradual decline. Sometimes you'll be lightheaded or nauseous right after, but you should have a good bit of a break between each one that you can kind of get back to baseline and get ready for the next one. So there should be a definitive beginning and end to each one. And that's the telltale sign that you're in real labor. And like I said, for pain, it's hard to gauge because it's going to be different for every person. I do think labor contractions are painful in an overall sense, but really the thing that gets me the most is the intensity. And I think that goes for most people. Knowledge is your best tool. Once you know what's going on in your body, you'll be much more comfortable going through the process because you know why this is happening, what your body's actually doing. You're able to work with your body and hopefully not be so tense, so let the contractions do the work that they're trying to do. And also, because while it is very painful, you know that it's going to end. So with each contraction, you know that you're going to get a little bit of relief when that's done. And then of course the overall process, you're not going to be in labor forever and ever. You will eventually have your baby, which is where we're trying to get to. And the quickest way to do that is to work with your body, not against it. So let's talk a little bit about what hormones are produced while you're having your contractions. So your early to active labor contractions are brought on by the hormone oxytocin. Now they call this like the lovey, comfortable hormone because that's what it's brought on by and that's how it makes you feel. But during your labor, oxytocin is very important because this is what keeps your contractions consistent and productive. And also, if you've ever been induced and they've given you Pitocin, this is the synthetic form of oxytocin. So that's why it keeps your contractions going and makes them more intense and therefore productive. So your contractions will gradually get more intense and then the hormone will switch to adrenaline. And this is the transition stage of your labor. This is the stage that happens between your active labor and when you're actually birthing your baby. And I think my midwife explained it beautifully that you're gonna panic, you're gonna think you can't do it anymore, and that's when you know you're in transition. It should not last very long and your baby will be here soon. And that was truly the most comforting thing, especially in my last labor that went a bit more quickly. You know that that relief is very soon in sight. And I think it's important to understand those hormones too. So when you do get to that transition stage and you freak out a little bit, you know why. It's hormone related. So hopefully this was helpful to know more about what your contractions are actually doing, what's happening in your body, so you can be confident that your body's doing what it needs to do to get your baby in your arms. Comment down below, what do you think actual contractions feel like? All right, that about wraps up our contraction talk. So don't forget, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already and turn that notification bell on so you don't miss out on anything. We've got a lot of good content coming up. Thanks for watching.